Right, good afternoon. This talk is on Huguenot resources as part of a series on the treasures of the SoG. Our speaker today is Elsa Churchill, who is the genealogist at the Society of Genealogists. And we may also see or hear from Christine Worthington, who is the library coordinator at the Society of Genealogists. So I will pass the baton to you, Elsa.
Thank you, and welcome everybody to the first of a series of talks that we're doing on focusing on some of the remarkable and interesting collections that we have in the Society of Genealogists Library and Archive. And today I'm going to be talking about the resources we have for anyone researching Huguenot families. I'll be talking about what we have in the Society and also how these resources relate to other institutions, societies and websites. I suppose I really need to kick off with the usual definition, what is a Huguenot? So I'm taking the definition from Kathy Chater's book on researching Huguenot families, who writes on the subject and whose podcast from the National Archives is still available to listen to online via their Discovery catalogue. Now, strictly speaking, Huguenots were French Protestant refugees who left France under Louis XIV. This was mainly about after 1680. However, they left for reasons of religious persecutions. We don't include among the Huguenot people who left France because of the French Revolution. They were political refugees. So it's a quite narrow description, really looking at sort of French Protestants. However, when the Huguenot Society was formed in the 19th century, they decided to include in their remit research on previous religious émigrés who were driven out of their countries because of their Protestantism. This includes the Walloons from French-speaking Flanders, the Dutch from the Netherlands in the 16th century, and also early waves of Huguenots of French people fleeing from France, especially after the massacre of St. Bartholomew, the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Day of 1572. But there were people coming out at other times and from other places. Now, in a half-hour talk, we don't have much really time to talk in very specifics about the social history and indeed go into a huge amount about some of the records. And the Society of Genealogists has two excellent talks from Sandra Robinson coming up in the events programme in April and May, when she'll be talking about who were the Walloons and Huguenots and how to find Huguenot ancestors. But to see if you an understanding of where Huguenots fall in the timeline of non-Anglican communities in England and Wales, there is a very useful timeline and background material on the Family Search Research Wiki, which I'm sure you're all aware of as a useful free resource, and certainly Huguenots features as some of the many sects and denominations that prove non-conformist challenges when you're researching your family history. As you'd expect, the Society of Genealogists does have background material, textbooks and guides, and has brought together all those who've been published recently and some time ago. I particularly draw your attention to the Society of Genealogists Volume 2 of the National Index of Parish Registers, Sources for Nonconformist Genealogy and Family History by D.J. Steele, which, although was published in the 70s, is really the basis of any of the guides for nonconformity from the point of view of an English genealogist. And of course, in addition to the recording, you'll all get a copy of these slides as a handout. So don't worry about making notes about books and things that I refer to as we go along. A copy of these slides will be made available to you. However, our own book, the National Index of Parish Registers, is one of the digital books which is available to members on SoG Data Online, available through the Search Our Collections tab in the Research Hub on the main library website. Chapter 6b deals with Walloons and Huguenots, and I've given you a link there that you can go straight to it if you're browsing through, and it still gives a very useful overview of history and records, and since this is made available to you free in the library. While the Society hasn't published its own guide to Huguenot research, I will draw your attention to others in our Nonconformist My Ancestor series which we've published over the years, from Baptists through to Mormons. And to say, our collections reflect very much the interest in non-Anglican communities. And of course, even though we haven't got our own, my ancestor was a Huguenot, there are some excellent textbooks, all of which you'll find in the Society's library, whether it is Kathy Chater's Tracing Your Huguenot Ancestors, Noel Currer-Briggs and Royston Gambier's Huguenot Ancestry, and of course, social history as well. Again, we have several hundred items with Huguenot listed within them in the catalogue, and I'll highlight some within the collections as of printed books, as well as archive and register and record resources that we have. Huguenots have always been a community that have been of interest to the Society of Genealogists. Of course, we were founded as the Society of Genealogists of London in 1911, and while London focus in the first few early years of the Society's foundation meant that there was a very much an interest in the Huguenot communities in London. But of course, we have source material for Huguenot communities all around the United Kingdom and Ireland. And that's certainly been reflected in the Genealogist magazine, whether it's the last issue in September 2023, where Michael Gandy gave an overview of some of these sources relating to Huguenots in the Bethnal Green settlements examinations, and his index to those. Again, whether it's something that we've published most recently, or indeed right from the beginning, with an interest in the Huguenots. I've given you some of the articles on Huguenot communities and Huguenot records and settlements and what the Huguenot Society does, which we've done from our inception, from our earliest magazines, from the subject guides to volume 1 to 20, or because we're working to put the Genealogist magazine online later this year, I can search across and see how many I've just highlighted there, which more recent volumes have something relating to Huguenots in them. And this might be anything from the questions relating to Huguenot research that we did as a brains trust in the 1970s. I'm sure that was thought of a great idea, a genealogical brains trust. I'm sure that reflected something that was on the radio or the TV at the time, with questions about people needing help from researching Huguenot research 50 years ago. Even before that, we were reviewing a very interesting family history of the Barrow family, a story of a family, one of the many Huguenot families which have been researched, and that published work is, of course, in the Society's library and reviewed in the magazine. So I think the magazine is an underused resource, and that's why I've done so many indications of how well you might find Huguenot resource material in it. The Society holds not only the Genealogist magazine that we publish ourselves, but the journals published by various Huguenot societies, including the Huguenot and Walloon Gazette, published in Belgium, or the Huguenot Heritage magazine that was published in New York, and of course the various journals and proceedings of the Huguenot Society of Great Britain and Ireland. So I've just listed there some of the publishers of journals that we have noted in the Society's catalogue. And again, you can see which periodicals and long runs of journals we hold. I think people would certainly come to the Society of Genealogists to find out what research is done before. And as you know, the Society of Genealogists does collect compiled family histories and pedigrees and notes and other people's research notes. And of course, you will have to search across various parts of the library and catalogue, library and archives to identify these, whether it's using the Society of Genealogists library catalogue, the guides to our various documents, special collections, our birth briefs online, or the roll pedigrees, or the indexes to the special collections. And I'll show you how all of those work. And while there may be many disparate searches you can make just for your Huguenot families and what resources we have for Huguenots in the library, it's worth following up on all of them, because we do have some interesting things to find. I'd certainly start with the Society of Genealogists library catalogue, where we list books, micromedia, i.e. fiche and microfilms, and CDs available through the Research Hub pathway on the Society's website. And you can make all sorts of searches in the catalogue. You can do the default browse by subject, and that might be the subject contains Huguenot, as I've done there. I've just hit that, and then any subject guidance we have on Huguenot topics. And you can see it's not only Huguenots in the United Kingdom, but overseas in Ireland, Africa, Belgium, all sorts of places as well. That's the browse by subject, but you can do more sophisticated advanced subjects, or just simple, any word Huguenot that crops up. So again, you can get all sorts of ways in attacking what we have in the library catalogue of books, micromedia and CDs. And that certainly will highlight that we collect many published family histories, encouraging people to write up their family histories. So, for example, we've highlighted there that the family of Grove, compiled by Edward Atkin Grove, we've highlighted that actually is a Huguenot family, and includes quite a lot of letters and correspondence within it. So that might be something that's of interest there. And again, another highlighted Huguenot family history with noted through the catalogue is in the Huguenot family of Desmoulins from 1603 to 2000, compiled by David Desmoulins. And again, it's a short report of his research, only 13 pages, but at least 3 pedigrees bound up within what we call the family history tracks. These compiled family histories are currently held in store. So in order to order them in as a visit to the Society, you'd need to identify the offsite BX store number. They're also being scanned and digitized as part of a partnership to put these online. And again, so it's quite possible when you order that Christine might identify that we have already scanned that particular family history, and you may be asked to read the digital version of it in the office prior to it going online, if we can, of course, publish it. And of course, that book of the Barreau family that was reviewed in the Genealogist magazine is listed in the catalogue. But I have noted we didn't actually highlight in 1967 that was a Huguenot family, even though it was reviewed as such. So I will ask Christine if I can add Huguenot as a part of the subject there to identify that as a Huguenot family history. I'll get that fixed. But again, just look for in the catalogue, particularly for the surnames you're researching. We may not know that the family you're researching were Huguenots. So again, but you can, of course, search the catalogue for compiled family histories using the surname you're interested in. And we haven't indexed the surnames in every book we have in the library. Hence, I'm sure you're, as family historians, you're familiar with the very useful bibliographies, such as the Genealogist Guide by G.W. Marshall, or Genealogical by J.B. Whitmore, etc., all of which identify narrative family histories with at least 3 generations of genealogies in all sorts of other books where we may well have the book, even though we haven't indexed or catalogued every family that's mentioned in that book. So the early version, the Genealogist Guide by G.W. Whitmore, is available freely online through the SoG data online. It's in the surname guides section of the SoG digitized collections. And if I go and blow that up a bit more, here, for example, it shows that it's arranged alphabetically, and it shows you that there's information on families of Ladbroke, a particular Huguenot family mentioned in the History of Surrey by Manning and Bray, and also Hublon, a very renowned, esteemed Huguenot name. All sorts of narrative genealogies from Morant's History of Essex, Berry's Essex Genealogies, the Journal Miscellanea Genealogica Heraldica, or the Harleian Society. All of these titles we have in the Society's library, identified through that guide to what's been published. We, of course, have many thousands of manuscript family trees deposited with the Society. In fact, we have some sort of 9,000 manuscript family trees compiled with some 20,000 sheets. And you may be aware of our pilot project Tree Search, which is allowing us to start to produce digitized scanned copies of some of these wonderful and sometimes beautiful and often very large manuscript compiled pedigrees. And while the pilot project only has the first 20 or 30 or so of those, we do actually have a spreadsheet listing all of them. And certainly we've made notes identifying where it's very obvious they're dealing with Huguenot families, such as the pedigrees relating to Amoreau of London. And we've made a note that that's a Huguenot family. And so you can do a keyword search across that spreadsheet to identify any Huguenot pedigrees within that collection. The way into that is to go to the library page of the website, our library, and look at some of the highlighted guides, and look to the guides to the archive collections. And this will be a way of looking for finding the pedigree list and much more. You'll note we have a sources for Huguenot genealogy amongst the collection guides, and I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. But here's the various folders that you can access through the library pages as a sort of temporary shortcut to some of our listings of archive material prior to them going on to the new archive catalogue at some point. But there you'll see the overall tree index along with the guide to the archive card catalogue, the special collections and the document collections and small collections listed there. That leads you to the overall index, to the roll pedigrees. So while we're uploading them to SoG Explore, that's our overall list. You can have a look at those. This is the guide to the names in our various manuscript collection. Here we have the guides to the names in the document collections that you can look at through the archive list. Again, you can identify any names that you might be researching, which particularly you think which are Huguenot, and have a look through those. And do the same. You might want to look through our guides and lists of names represented in our special collections. The special collections are probably more extensive than the document collection of manuscript research notes. The special collections are usually the note of a genealogist's work over a lifetime, looking at several families with a common theme, and that may well be Huguenots, and they often comprise more than one box full of material. They often have arrived at the Society in a removal van. Most are now housed off-site, where we're cataloguing them, and you can use the archive guides to the special collections to see if the names you're interested in are represented in them, and then we can order them in for you. So that moves us away from compiled family histories and pedigrees and what's in our research manuscript notes to actually looking at records and source material through the library catalogue. Of course, we do, of course, hold the lots of source material, particularly copies of and transcripts of church registers, all those particularly published from the Huguenot Society and in the various proceedings and quarto series that they've published over the years, and also many copies of the original records themselves, which have now been deposited with the National Archives, but again, which are accessible at the Society of Genealogists in a number of ways. But I'd start with the Society of Genealogists online catalogue, put in the name of the church or a place you're interested in as a search term. And here you can see we have French Protestant and Huguenot material for many hundreds of transcripts of registers. I think it's about 200 or so of pretty much all the known London, Walloon and French Protestant congregations have had their records published, but these are the original records now in the RG4 series at the Society, at the National Archives, where we have microfilm copies of them. And again, these are not only available in microfilms in the old lower library and now held off-site, but catalogued in detail in the catalogue. There are also films available through the Family Search catalogue, and of course included in some of the pay-per-view or subscription websites that you might have access to from home, or indeed viewable at the Society of Genealogists. So you'll find Huguenot transcripts and records in Ancestry and the Genealogist and Find My Past, for example. Also, our Boyd's Marriage Index relied on lots of transcripts of Huguenot registers when he was compiling his index of millions of marriage entries from early registers. So, for example, here is the marriage entry of Philip Barreau from the Barreau family marrying Catherine Strang in the Westminster Tabernacle and a Huguenot chapel. That's in Boyd's Marriage Index. That's available on SoG Data Online. It's also available on Find My Past, again, on one of our partner sites that we work with. You might find other entries relating to the Barreau families in register entries from the Protestant Huguenot registers deposited at the National Archives in the RG4 series and published perhaps through Family Search and indexed on those, and also through the Genealogist. That's another site that's available at the Society of Genealogists. There's another entry for another entry from the Barreau family, this time with the accompanying image of the record on the Genealogist, or indeed through Ancestry. Again, we make those available in the library, or you may have subscriptions to them at home. So Huguenot registers are quite easily accessible in a variety of ways, but it is interesting how well brought together they are in the Society of Genealogists library, because we have access to all of them. As you know, the Society of Genealogists is a Family Search affiliate library, and of course you can use the Family Search catalogue to identify material that used to be on microfilm, which may now be digitized. So it's not just the historical records which you can search on Family Search, but you can use the catalogue to identify which records they have filmed and or digitized. So, for example, we have those for that indexed entry from the French Protestant Church Le Tabernacle at Westminster. They have digitized the records themselves, and if you were at the Society of Genealogists, that camera icon would be unlocked with no key above it, and you could view the image through the Family Search catalogue at the Society of Genealogists. Occasionally, some of the transcripts of registers that we hold, we may have even published online ourselves. So, for example, I was interested what Huguenot records do we have for Dublin, and make a fair number came up on the catalogue. But one of those, the registers of the French Conformist Church of St Patrick and St Mary, Dublin, which had been published as a transcription in 1893. We have a copy at the Society, and indeed we've made it available as a digitized book on SoG Data Online. So if you're a member, you'll be able to view that book as one of the digitized books we've made available ourselves to our members. In addition to local church registers, we also have perhaps monumental inscriptions, and again there are a few burial grounds and cemeteries identifiably Huguenot, which have got published records which we hold in the library collection. I'll go back to some of the searches you can do in the catalogue. You learn the sort of some of the way we've presented some of the religions Huguenot search you can do. You can see that, you know, if you're looking to sort of identify not only record guides or a guide to Huguenot wills, or perhaps bibliographies of what there is, or the history of the Huguenot hospital, for example. So we've given some subject guidance of things you might want to browse through, or you can probably find them by the simple searches as well. But these are some of the subject headings, which is a good way to start of what we have in the library. So let's also move away from the library to our special collections. Now, our most important special collection are the microfilm copies of the Wagner Collection. This was donated to us by the Huguenot Library, This is a copy of the Wagner Collection, the fruit of many years' work of Henry Wagner, Fellow of the Society of Antiquaries. His dates are 1840 to 1926. He was really an eminent researcher into the genealogy of about 900 British Huguenot families. The pedigrees of some of these families were published in the Huguenot Society proceedings, but most of them remain unpublished in various states of completion in manuscript form. And a list of those families researched has been compiled by Margaret Harcourt Williams. That was published in the journal Huguenot Families, which was a journal focusing on genealogy research published by the Huguenot Society of Great Britain between 1999 to 2009. We, of course, have that index in the Society's collection, but we also indexed the collection ourselves when we received the microfilm files in 1981, and we added that index into the Special Collections Card Index. The originals of the Wagner Collection research files are available on request at the UCL Huguenot Society Library, which I think is still at the National Archives, but manned only for a couple of days, and you would have to order them well in advance. You can order the films into the Society on any of the days where we're ordered, any of the days that we're open. However, in preparing this, I noticed yesterday that there are other ways to access the films as well. However, our own index to the Wagner Collection is in the archive card catalogue. This is the Special Collections card catalogue. And you'll notice that within that card catalogue, you'll see reference to surnames, but they're represented in the Wagner Collection. And indeed, he made notes on the Barrault family as well. So in addition to our index of the 1,000 names or so that we know that are represented in the Wagner Collection, the Huguenot Society has on its website an index to the names in the Wagner Collection notes, and again confirming that Barrault is indeed represented in there. And as I said, you can order the films in at the Society of Genealogists, or as I discovered, they are actually freely available to view from home through the Family Search Library. So you could look for the Wagner Collection of Huguenot pedigrees. That's the catalogue entry. The 6 microfilm reels are available to view. I viewed them from home yesterday. They don't have a key above the icon. I'm not sure if that's an intention or not, but at the moment they're free to view, and you can view the notes having looked at the index to see if the surnames you're interested in are represented. So here we've got the Wagner Collection of Huguenot pedigrees. Some of the names of André. That's some of them relate to the beautiful printed up family trees that the Huguenot Society published as sort of fold-out pedigrees in some of its journals and proceedings. But occasionally you may also find not only the finished product, but his working notes as well. He's, as an antiquarian, Henry Wagner has the classic 19th century, very, very precise but almost illegible handwriting. So good luck in working out his research notes as well. And there's his research notes on the Barrault family. No beautiful printed version of the pedigree. This is one that remains in manuscript form and was never published. Another thing I just want to perhaps look at are the printed pedigrees of Huguenot families, particularly looking at families in France, compiled by Charles Edmund Lart. He himself was of Huguenot descent and was an eminent late 19th and early 20th century Huguenot researcher. And his books, the Huguenot pedigrees, are of course narrative pedigrees. We have them in the Society's library, but of course as a family history, they're also available to view on the Internet Archive or through the books that you can view online through the Family Search catalogue, and you can view the digital version of the 2 volumes freely available online through Family Search as well. So just as an overview here, in addition to the Wagner Collection notes of Huguenot families compiled by Henry Wagner and the Lart's Huguenot pedigrees, we do of course have all the published proceedings in the quarto series publications of the Huguenot Society, which include not only the published and transcribed church registers, but consistory court minutes, wills of Huguenots, the support of poor relief for poor Huguenots, and indeed the indexing they did for denizations and naturalizations and returns of aliens, not only of Huguenots, but of all foreigners, taken from records at the National Archives, and the various returns of strangers in the metropolis for the early for the late 16th and early 17th centuries, all of which are at the Society of Genealogists. There are the indexes to them, which we hold as well. Our CD is, we've got a question mark by that. We're still trying to identify whether that disappeared, but we certainly have the indexes on fiche. But I'll finish up with just recommending that if you wanted the overview of what I've just been saying, as a reminder, on the library pages of the Society's website, we have the guide to sources for Huguenot genealogy, which is a sort of printed overview of all the things I've referred to, and you can use that as your aide-memoire and free handout. I've deliberately not given you a copy because I want to encourage you to go to the research hub pages of the website, click on our library, click on the sources for Huguenot genealogy, and look at that guide to collections, as well as all the other collections that Christine has been working assiduously on in the background prior to opening. The Huguenot Society's website does have lots of information for family historians particularly. It does highlight within that website, which other libraries has all its publications. So it definitely mentions the Society of Genealogists here, but also useful guidance and notes and FAQs for anyone researching Huguenot ancestry. So again, I think our collections, often published by the Huguenot Society, reflect and enhance each other's. Because we were interested in our Huguenot material, we'd had some questions about it, we decided to make this the first of the featured collections. So in the new library, you'll see this area near the common area. This is where we're going to be having our featured collections, which is just some of the Huguenot Society proceedings, some of the guides, and I hope that you'll come and use them at Society, or use those which we make available online, or indeed use those through other websites and institutions. But again, I think we've been very interested and pleased to know that if you've got Huguenot ancestry, then the Society of Genealogists is a good place to bring all those resources together as a one-stop shop. And so I shall finish my presentation there. I'm just about to time. I will definitely answer any questions, but I'll give Malcolm an opportunity to stop recording there, and then I'll stop sharing my presentation.